Have you ever hit a mental wall in your training or wondered why mindset sometimes holds you back more than your physical abilities? Maybe you've watched elite athletes crumble under pressure and thought, what's really going on here? Well, today we're diving into the space where mental health meets athletic performance with someone who lives in both worlds. I'm thrilled to welcome Kaitlyn Sampson, founder of Mental Health Booster. Kaitlyn is not only a licensed professional counselor in Missouri and Kansas and a registered play therapist, but she's also the head cheerleading coach at Raytown High School. From her days as a college cheerleading captain to now helping athletes break through mental barriers, Kaitlyn has created a unique approach to performance coaching that addresses the whole person. Kaitlyn, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure. Well, you are one of the rare people that I actually know in person. Most of my guests, I just only know them through Zoom. So I'm glad that I get to know you in real life because we're both on the Kansas Counseling Association board. And so it's been fun to get to know you and see what you're doing in your life. So tell us a little bit about, I mean, I did a little bit of your background
Yeah.
history, but what got you from cheerleading in college and probably doing sports in high school clear to counselor slash helping other athletes with this?
Yeah, honestly, it's been a very long road. Like you mentioned, I am a high school cheerleading coach, and I'm actually the coach at the high school I went to. So I'm born and raised in Kansas City. And growing up, when they always ask you, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was always like gung ho for like a veterinarian. I loved animals, and here we are. And then I go to college,
Mhm.
and it was a lot harder than I expected. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do in my life. And so I was just taking my like general education classes and I took a psychology class and I was like, okay, like I like this. And everyone's like, you give great advice. Lo and behold, that's not even what, counselors even do. But, they just like always a people person. And I liked helping people. I mean, that is a part of why I wanted to be a vet. And so I was like, okay, I'll just take some more of these classes. And then I had a really great class with a professor at our college. And then I originally didn't think I'd see myself doing it, but I was like, okay, I'll be a school counselor. So I got my degree in psychology and then a minor in education. And then I, still did sports and everything throughout college and, like you mentioned, high school and just as soon as I could walk, really. But then I started my master's and then I kind of put like the sports aside. And then I got my master's in counseling psychology all the way to the end of my program, realized that school counseling was a whole different master's degree. But I was like, I've already spent 2.5 years of my life on this. I'm not going back to school again. So I still applied at schools and then nothing just stuck. But I think it was honestly really just God's timing and everything because it was COVID when I graduated and my first year as a school counselor would have been virtual and, not knowing what to do. And so I think,
Mhm.
everything worked out. Excuse me. I think then I want to work with kids and teens. So I found my way in the private practice realm and then I started coaching and I'm like, oh, I'm back to like what I love doing. I work with kids and teens during the day and then at nighttime I go work with more teens and in a fun activity that I love to do. And it's honestly, a lot of people don't realize that it's a harder sport than people think, but
Mhm.
that's a whole nother topic for another podcast. Um, but then going through day to day at my job, I was, doing counseling with kids and teens. I got my registered play therapy. And that's been helpful with like the day to day work, but I still felt like something was missing. And every day when I'd go to practice, people would come talk to me. And then even like kids around the school would just come start talking and stuff. And then anytime I tell people I'm a therapist, they're like, oh, that makes sense. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Mhm.
And, I started finding that I'm doing more like counseling in my practices day to day and like the mindset. And I'm like, every school has a physical trainer, but no one has like a mental health trainer. And because
Mhm.
that's just not a thing that is really big, at least in the high school levels. I think it's starting
Mhm.
to now become more when you're looking at like the professional athletics.
Mhm.
Sometimes with like the college realm, they just go to like the college counselor, or maybe they have like academic advisors, but it's really an untapped market. And so looking into it
Mm.
more, there's different certifications you can get and all that. So it's starting to become a bigger thing for sure. But yeah, I just started to like, take those two areas that I'm in day to day and couple it and, make it a business and make it to where I'm giving back. And as we'll get into, I'm sure later, like with coaching, I can do it around the world. So that's another thing. It doesn't limit me. And helping, just athletes in any kind of realm and what they're going through from, the little ones starting out all the way to, a professional athlete or retiree. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like what really got me into it. And I'm starting it all out now, which is exciting. But I feel like this is work that I've been doing for a very long time. Just I didn't have a name for it, So
Mhm. Exactly. Oh, I think about that all the time too, where I have been doing this for so long. And when I first came into coaching, it is so similar to what I've done for the last 31 years before I became a coach.
yeah,
And for a while, I was like, oh no, I can't be a coach because, I'm a school counselor.
yeah,
But then I was like, it's the same thing. It's just called a different name.
uh-huh,
And now, like you said, I can work with people across the whole world and not just the ones that were in my school building, which was one of the main reasons why I wanted to like branch out and see more people too. But so I'm sure when you were in high school and maybe even in college, people probably weren't talking about the mental health of the athletes. And you probably saw some things, or maybe you even experienced things on your own where you were like, oh my gosh, if I would have had mental health help or mindset coaching or something, this would have been so different. So, is that kind of where you were? Well, and working with the high school kids now, you see how much they need that mental health part.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, growing up, I always had a really good family system. And then, in college and high school, great coaches and things like that. There definitely was a big switch, though, from going from high school to college that no one prepared me for. And again, I had an
Mhm.
amazing coach, but that just some of those things weren't talked about from
Mhm.
the physical side, too, but especially mental, because, college is just such a bigger world and you're more on your own but you have so much stuff that you have to balance. But I didn't start really realizing it until I'm working in the schools and or, at my private practice because some people don't have the same upbringing I have and they don't have the supports and mental health isn't talked about in any area of life. And
Mhm.
no one's there to like push them in a positive, healthy way. And I have like some athletes that are excuse me that have came to my private practice that I work at and we find our way always talking about sports and the mindset, but they never came to me for that. It was always like anxiety or, sleep problems or this and that. But I'm like, as I'm talking to them, we keep coming back to sports. And so,
Mhm.
between my experiences, and then also knowing, the ins and outs of psychology, I think of coupling those two. And I think that personal experiences plus just work experiences have definitely, shown
Mhm.
that there's still work to do in this area, and
Oh
I'm just
my.
happy I get to do it. Yeah.
Yes, I think about that too because coming from education, we don't do half as much as we need to be doing in the mental health realm in a school setting. And I know that part of it is just because we couldn't figure out how do we
Yeah.
find the time and how do we get to all the kids. The last high school I worked at had 2,000 students.
Yeah.
And so, it's hard to how do you get around to people? And we had 7 counselors, but I mean, it's just really hard to find the way to do it, and it needs to be done as just every person, every staff member needs to be taking care of their own mental health as well as modeling and helping every single student in the classroom, whether it's a teacher, the janitor,
Right.
the the lunch person. I mean, everybody needs to be aware of this and how they're dealing with their own and how they're helping other people. And it just needs to be part of the fabric of the school, which has not happened yet. But
Absolutely.
maybe, you are someone who can help with that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know from at least my personal experience as a coach, I can't speak for every district, but our district makes every coach take a online test, and it just kind of talks about like signs of suicide and those things, but that's it. And luckily I have
Mm-hmm.
the professional background where, that is a refresher to me, but then also I do this day in and day out. So when I go to practice, I know how to talk to kids, and I know how to be a support for them. I know to check in and signs of things and whatnot. And I think that I've seen coaches all over, the country. They do very well as well. They just don't have the training. And so I think that also with my business mental health booster, I think that's where it's kind of unique as well because I am a licensed professional. So I have the, educational background too, not just the motivational sports side. Like you said, the time and all the resources that goes into it, it can be a lot. And so hopefully, more and more people want to do this work because it is something that you just need more people because there's not enough time in the day to see everyone all the time for every need. But the goal is obviously to reach out to however many people we can.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that anxiety is one of the main things that you see with athletes, whether it's, a perfectionism anxiety, like, "I wanna be perfect at this sport," or, "I wanna be the best," or, "I wanna become an Olympic athlete," or is
Mhm.
it parental pressure? Is it like, what kinds of things do you see with athletes in particular?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. I think like the anxiety performance or performance anxiety, that is definitely a really big one of all athletes at any level, really, because you just want to win. You want to do great. And I think that win mindset is really tough because obviously you're in a sport because you want to win, sure, but there's
Mhm,
all the other things too. And at the end of the day, if you're just doing your best, in my opinion, that's winning. But there
mhm,
is the societal pressures, there's the parental pressures. Some people want to make it to the next level, so there's pressure to never mess up. So performance anxiety is definitely a big one, coupled with just the pressures that are put on. I think also too, sometimes people don't know how to be a support. So that's a whole nother side in service like I offer is like, services for the parents, guardians, or support system of how you can be a healthy, positive support for the athlete because that matters. Like your support system is huge. And, you see these professional athletes, a lot of times they make it on their own, but then the other ones are, they have a supportive family and that have never let them stop and are driving them to gyms at 5 a.m., all the things. I think
mhm.
that is a big piece that people don't think about because they're always just looking at the athlete. And sometimes it's, the support or what they have going on around them too. And so I think that can then go back to the athlete and they feel those pressures. Or I know I work at a school district where, some kids, they never have a break because they are playing student, they're playing athlete, they're playing mom, they're playing, they're doing so many things, they're going to jobs. And hats off to all of them. And I know that's a reality for a lot of athletes around the world that, they don't have breaks. So then I think sometimes that goes into then the diagnosing kind of mental health issue side because then they're not being able to effectively perform because they have other things going on outside of sports. And luckily a lot of athletes can lock in and this can be their one outlet, but sometimes that can be really hard.
Is that something that you talk to parents and others about? Like, especially if you think a child is overly scheduled and has too many things going on, is that something, especially if because I've had this experience before where clients or students would tell me, I can't take all this stuff. Like, I can't do all these things. But the parents, like, oh no, they're going to do all these things. So, do you work with the parents sometimes to try to get them to make a different choice about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do it in a unique way because I start with the athlete first. So, like, how do you want to talk to your parents? Do you want to
Mhm.
you talk to them or do you want me to talk to them? Like, how can we do this? So, and I kind of give them the choice because it's their life at the end of the day. And I also want to teach them to advocate for themselves because throughout their
Mhm.
lives, sports or not, they're going to need to advocate for themselves. But I'm always there of like, I'm not just sending you out to the fire, like, how do you want me to support you through talking with your parents? We can role play it, we can talk about it, or I can just talk to it, but speak on your behalf, but not speak for you. But I've done it both ways, and so and I can see it like sometimes we'll have family sessions where the client sits there and I'm just there to make sure everyone is heard and like, hold on, mom, did you hear what she was saying? And those things.
Yeah.
And hold parents accountable too, but it's also in a not confrontational way. It's a like
Mm-hmm.
supportive and like we're just trying to get this right. And you want your kid to succeed. So you're already in the right place. Just how can we tailor it to like how they need? And I
Mm-hmm.
think it just depends also like on, the SES backgrounds and, the ethnic backgrounds and stuff too. Sometimes that can be a little challenging because obviously sometimes it's not even that they're doing anything wrong. That's just how they were taught too. And, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And, or I think people model what they see on the TV or social media for, these professional athletes. But sometimes you can't model what they go through because that's not what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
So I think definitely encouraging that parents, guardians, or whoever is their biggest support system to be involved is so important because it does matter.
Yeah. That makes me think about I listened to this podcast about, and this is not really about athletics, but it's about little kid influencers
Yeah,
that are influencers because of clothing or I don't know, they're dancers or they're these different things. And the parent, because they're so young, they actually aren't supposed to have an Instagram account because you have to be 13 or whatever. And
exactly.
so
Yeah.
their parents own Instagram account, but are focusing or showcasing their child.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how the parents don't like how much they have to some of the things they have to do. Like there's a lot of predatory men in particular that are going on these sites and commenting and doing these different things. And, some people were saying about the parents, like, well, they should just stop doing that or they should not do it. But the parents were saying, I feel like if I don't do this, my child won't have a chance
Yeah.
to get to the next level or whatever. And I think there is, I mean, I don't think any parents are being mean or malicious or trying to cause problems or whatever. I think they just so badly want something for their child and they feel like this is the way to do it.
Right. And I know a lot of times if the kid ever does speak up, it will be in anger or it'll be going off on their
Right.
parent. So I try to hopefully help out before it gets to that point. Um,
Mhm.
even if it's not like a big sit down meeting, it's just like a hey, the other day I heard you yelling at your kid saying this, what is a better effective way that you can get that same point across, but you can do it
Mhm.
in a way that will be effective because, sometimes, yes, kids need pushed. I mean, adults need pushed sometimes, right?
Sure.
There's a way to do it and a way to not. And I think that is the hard part because it's not a textbook or like this is the way to do it. It depends the person
Mhm.
and their needs. And so I think,
Mhm.
diving into like what people need. And that's why like I said, I start with the athlete first of like, how do you need to be motivated? How do you need to be supported? Because they need to know that themselves. You can't sit here and, tell a parent you need to do this, this, and this if they don't even know what they need. So spending time with
Right.
how they need to be supported or like kind of self-worth, self-esteem, all those kind of things go into that too. And learn
Mhm.
about themselves because if they don't even know themselves they won't make it to any level because they won't know anything from you know the ground up. They're going to be so focused on the sports, but there's so much other stuff going on. And so I think
Mm.
that's a part too of like, I will talk to your parents, sure, but like we're going to work on you too. Of like, how can you advocate for
Mhm.
yourself? What do you need? What do you need to feel supported? How don't you, the do's and don'ts? And
Mhm.
take some time for that as well so they can learn that and carry that with them too.
Sure. Well, self-awareness, I think, is so important. And I always have my clients take an assessment where we kind of know what are your strengths, what are your values, what kinds, so that we can use that information in everything that we do. And they can use that information not just about anxiety, but everything. So is that kind of how you're um, taking care of the whole child by looking at all these areas? It's not just the athletics, it's not just school or whatever. It's just kind of like the whole thing and what is good for that particular child or
Yeah,
teen.
absolutely. Yeah. I kind of just like go off of what they need. Obviously, what are you reaching out for? A lot of times it is like, I just want to strengthen my mental health, or, sometimes it's like when they're going through a rut or, they're having problems with something because like mentally they're not there. And so I think like that is something to talk about. I think also then whenever achieving those goals and working on self, I think that comes with like learning strategies and skills. And so those are parts that I work on. Also, it's just like overall health and wellness too. Because, yeah, if you are taking care of your body physically, then mentally that should, couple. But if you're not doing one or the other, it's really hard to, do. So there's some education in that as well. And like looking
Mhm.
at like, what they eat and what they, how they sleep and this and that. And I always come from a humanistic perspective, but also like a realistic one. At the end of the day,
Mhm.
you're gonna, have a piece of pizza sometimes, and that's okay because pizza is delicious. But like trying to
Yes.
create a healthy relationship with sports, with food,
Mhm.
with, mindset and all the things, because I think that is a big area as well. And that's probably one of the biggest areas you see in mental health with athletes is eating disorders or, body dysmorphia, stuff like that, because
Mhm.
there is such a unhealthy relationship with the gym, with nutrition, with,
Mhm.
whatever sport. And I think sometimes that is another thing where kids get pushed so hard because they are obviously on this track to be at the next level. And so they're pushing their bodies and their mindset, which, yes, you do need to push yourself. I'm not saying it's going to be an
Mhm.
easy route. However, there needs to be a healthy relationship, because then you see, these athletes that are, they're retiring early because they're over the sport or their body can't take it anymore. Or, I mean, you've
Mhm.
even seen like Simone Biles in the two Olympics ago where she was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore because like her mental health was not right and not there. And so I think that you can push yourself all you want, but if the mental's not there, or we don't have healthy relationships to the sport or to the areas that will help our bodies and our minds, then, again, that's not going to be a good trajectory. So I think that's
Mhm.
another thing that I work on is just overall life habits and goals and things like that
Mhm.
related in sports, but then, life skills and stuff outside of sports too. So that way it gets them to the next level that they're wanting to achieve, but then also they're not lacking in any other areas of life too.
Mhm. They're so interconnected, and I think about balance too. I talk to my clients all the time. Usually mine I have to talk about, video game usage and talking about the balance. Like, yeah, they're fun, and you should totally do that for downtime, but also you should see other people, and you should go to, have supper with your parents and all those things. Do your homework.
Yes, I love the word
So
balance. It's my big word.
yes, balance, yes, is so, so important, and it's how you that's exactly what you were describing with what you were doing. Now your, mental health booster,
Yeah,
it has coaching
right.
and it has counseling because, you also are a licensed professional counselor. So
Yes.
what's the difference between those 2 things? And when people go to your website, they can see both. So how would they know, like, what should I choose or how does this work?
Absolutely. So the difference between coaching and counseling, it's pretty simple, but not like it's really kind of hard to explain because I am a mental health professional, it does overlap. However, when we're doing coaching, it's really just about achieving those goals, working on yourself, strategies, and there's like no diagnosing. Obviously,
Mhm.
we can talk about mental health issues or things like that, but if it's getting into, these are things that maybe need to be diagnosed or they're more severe, or let's put sports on the back burner right now and we need to talk about your depression. That's where it kind of goes into maybe the counseling side, where counseling, you are treating the psychological conditions and there might be diagnosing there or the mental health challenges. And I think that that's where I see more kids or teens, because at that point sports aren't even what they're talking about. Sure, they go to it
Mhm.
every day or whatever, or sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're missing practice all the time because they can't get out of bed because they're so depressed. So I think that
Mhm.
um that's where if when it starts getting more severe or just more focused on the mental health side because not related to our performance or our goals, that's when you start seeing more counseling. And on my website I do have like the differences on my FAQ page, but then I also on my services page have a little bit more in depth of each one. And counseling is coming soon. I got obviously all the lovely licenses and paperwork and all that stuff to get together. But coaching, that's another thing, is a lot simpler. Like it's not a lot of paperwork. I asked just a little bit of information to get to know you. And also like if you're a minor, your parents' information and things like that, but it's very just simple and I can meet you anywhere. I can meet you on a
Mhm.
court. I can meet you on a track, in a field. And that helps with the athlete because, athletes go to personal trainers or physical trainers all the time. They go to practices and stuff and they practice exactly what they will be doing in their game or their meet or,
Mm.
all the things. And if you're coming to, my counseling office, but I'm doing coaching and we're just sitting on a couch, I that's, sometimes there's strength in that. Sometimes people need to get out their sport so they can talk. But sometimes, I could be sitting here like, let's hit a bunch of free throws and tell me what you're thinking. What are you feeling? And
Mm,
that's the beauty of it because I don't have to worry about HIPAA. I can meet you wherever.
yeah.
I can
Mhm,
also do virtual sessions, like I said, around the world because there isn't a limit at this time on, any coaching
mhm,
versus my
mhm,
counseling. I have to have a license and until this compact that hopefully gets approved soon. I can only
mhm,
see people in the states that I have license in. And so, and due to HIPAA, you have to come to, an office, or I know some people have certain licenses where they can like walk and talk therapy, but I currently don't have any of that. So I think that that's another part of strength with coaching is like I can meet you
mhm,
anywhere, virtual or in person, and just meet the person where they're at physically and mentally and work on
mhm,
some of those things like you would a sport or you would when you're doing your activity, because then you
mhm,
can physically be in it because you're doing it versus just talking about it and then going and doing it at practice 3 days later and then coming back in a week
mhm.
and a half to tell me how it went.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I hadn't even thought about that, but that's so good to be like actively involved in it and having somebody to talk through what you're thinking and doing at that time.
Yeah.
Sounds perfect. And I would guess too, that you take insurance on the counseling side and then you wouldn't on the coaching side? Is that kind of how that would work? Or would you be able to take insurance both, or are you going to not take it at all? I know there's all sorts of ways to do that.
Yeah, so everyone is kind of, it depends on their own. At this time, no one in coaching should be taking insurance though.
Right. Yeah.
So if you are, probably check all that. But I
Yeah.
am not. And at this time for counseling, I'm not taking insurance as well. I have very affordable prices, I feel, and I don't have
Mhm.
them listed on the website because it really just depends what you're coming for. If you're coming for
Sure.
coaching, if you're coming for counseling, versus also I have other services for like giving assistance to people when like they need. So like if they're coming to me and like, I want to get back in the gym and stuff. I'm not a physical trainer, but I know some. So I can go to
Yeah.
the gym and work with you and we can work out. Another thing, like I said, that you can do with coaching that you can't do with counseling. I could literally
Right.
go to the gym and work out with you and we can talk about the mental health
Mhm.
while we're doing it. But sometimes people want a personal trainer. I am not one and I don't claim to be anything I'm not, or a nutritionist, but I have
Mhm.
people. So I will connect to people, and that's like another service I offer, and so that is
Mm.
obviously not going to be the same amount as coaching. So I do a
Sure.
free 20-minute consultation for anyone just so I can get to know them and see what they are wanting, and what they're needing. Also frequency, because not every athlete needs to come every single week for 45 minutes to an hour. Sometimes they just need it like
Mhm.
preseason, season starting up. I just want to get in a good health place, or I cannot
Mhm.
make a goal to save my life, but I used to, like, what's happening, and then they get it fixed
Mhm.
and they figure out the rut and then they're back on
Yeah.
track. So, that
Mhm.
is a thing with coaching and counseling where even in counseling, the repetition and the frequency of coming in, it looks a little different and that's for a purpose. But coaching, you
Mhm.
don't necessarily need that, but I do it case by case basis. So free 20
Sure.
minute consult just so I can get to know where people are at and what they're needing, and then I go from there. But it won't be more than unreasonable amount. I mean, and I think
Right.
it's also your timing too, because obviously if you add more time, you can, but it will be at a cost. But
Sure.
as of right now, I've done a coaching session for like $75 and it's a
Mhm.
one-time thing and we're good. And then they come back if they need
Right.
it out, versus
Yeah.
counseling where it can be a little bit more expensive. I still try to keep it affordable. And at this time, I just don't use insurance. So, but
Mhm.
there's plans, or I'm not opposed to, talking to people about finances to make it work, because obviously I want to make it affordable and make it where people
Mhm.
can, get resources that they actually need.
Yeah, I love that. So where else can we see you? I think Instagram is one of the places.
Yes, I have Instagram and Facebook at Mental Health Booster, and that's all combined together. And so I'm pretty active on Instagram. And then obviously I just share anything I post to Facebook. And then also I have my website, as you mentioned, and it's mental health booster.com. And so that's where, you can see more about my services and myself. And there's also questions, and then there's a connection part. So you can like fill that out. And once I see that, I just reach out and, just touch base to see, is this something that you would be, interested in, and what are we coming for? And then, like I said, I'm always for referring people out if that's not what's needed. If, they're coming to me for nutrition, I'm not a nutritionist, but I know some people. So I want to get, people the right care. And that initially isn't a charge. I'm not going to just like, okay, $15 for you to, tell me that, you want to have a personal trainer and I'm not that, but I'll give you my contacts. It's not that. That if I refer
Right.
on because they're seeking services that I don't provide, that's also a free resource because I don't want to leave anyone hanging. It's just if you're doing
Right.
the mental side with me, but you're also needing extra support for other professionals, that's where, stay with me for the mental side and we'll, have a good collaboration with other professionals so that way it's well-rounded care for what people need.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I'm glad that a lot of people in those different areas. Sometimes I feel the same way. Like I'm like, well, I'm not the person, but I don't know who the person is.
Yeah,
So, and
absolutely.
yeah, that's just a professional way I think of like when people are talking to us to be able to say, well, I don't think I can help you, but this other
Right.
person can help you.
Yeah, and I'm trying to like network with so many people around the world because again, I want to provide those for people. And I mean, sure, yeah, I get
Mhm.
myself out there as well, but it's above me. I just want to, network because if I have someone reach out to me from, Nebraska, I don't really know tons of people there, but I know a few. But you switch it to Oregon or somewhere further away, I don't know anyone
Mhm.
really there. So
Right.
trying to get to know people more because yes, we are in a day and age where virtual is amazing. So at least I have some virtual people that can help out,
Mhm.
but like trying to, know more people in person and what they do in their states. So that way I can,
Mhm.
add them to my resource list. So that's another thing I add on here too. If like, if you're a professional and wanting to reach out to, network or to, make those connections so we can help each other out and refer on to, get each other business, but also just to help people, then that's another thing that I'm looking forward to is like just making
Mhm.
connections with more people. So that way I have a long list of awesome people to help people.
Yes. Well, and my listeners are not only parents,
Yeah.
but I have a lot of educators who listen. And so educators who know athletes in their schools or also maybe know some connections that they could connect with you. So I hope they all reach out and let you know, or maybe, just the parents that need this kind of coaching and counseling that they check you out. And all the links will be in my show notes and everywhere that our podcast is shown on YouTube and other places. These links will be there so they can just go find them after they get done listening. So I appreciate so much that you were with us today. This was a topic that I really wanted to talk about because I think athletes have kind of a special, it's just different for them sometimes because of the mental capacity it takes to, do their sport, and I wasn't an athlete, so
Yeah.
not that I can't totally relate because I did do theater and music, and there's a mental capacity to that too, but,
Absolutely.
I think athletes have it's a little bit different, and I'm glad to talk to someone who actually knows about it.
Absolutely. And I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like it's very important to know that yes, the athletes have things that other people might not have going on or this and that. But at the end of the day, they're still people. And so I like to
Yeah.
make sure that I'm, like I said, those life skills or just talking to them, like, how was your day? And just being with them before we even start
Mhm.
talking about sports. Because I, again, want to create that healthy relationship with their sport or their activity. And then just,
Mhm.
help them boost their mental health in all areas of life. And then hopefully that will elevate their athletics too. So,
Yeah,
so
definitely. Well, thank you, Caitlin, it was so fun.
yes, thank you for having me.
Mhm.